Hello everyone, it's Simo here. So today I'm going to be showing you how I made the Alice in Wonderland bodice of my Alice in Wonderland cosplay that is now for sale on my online shop on Etsy. The bodice is very interesting with these almost two dimensions alternating between the sheer part of the bodice and the solid part of the bodice, and it's full of details that I will walk you through in this video. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoy. So with every sewing project I begin by pinning my pattern down and cutting out the fabric. In this case I'm using the same base taffeta as the skirt. Here you can see me marking out the fabric that I cut then into bias strips, which will serve for the piping later. Here you can see that I just pinned on this very narrow Cluny lace edging that will serve to give this very tiny little subtle touch of detail. And then later I based it on this, let's say, small organza piece, which finished off the piece. And then I placed on the full layer of silk organza on top and got it basted together. For what concerns the shoulder seams, I just cut the seam allowance down to be very narrow and then folded it over on itself and top stitched it in place, and this created a very nice, very narrow, almost 1/8 inch French seam. Here you can see me switching my regular foot to a zipper foot, which I use to create my piping, which is just basically some cord that is wrapped in those bias cut strips of fabric that I cut before, and then I just pinned them onto the correspondent bodice pieces and got them basted in place. For what concerns the shoulders along the neckline, I couldn't find really any kind of flower lace motifs that would fit the whole Alice in Wonderland vibe and that would look close to the original, so I decided to embroider my own. I cut out a few pieces of this tulle netting and then some wash away stabilizer, which acts as a fabric. Then I put it all into my hoop, which I tightened up really tightly. And on the machine I changed my needle to a fine needle that you use for fine fabrics and loose weaves. I believe it was a 7010. And then switched my machine to all the appropriate settings for embroidery. And of course, Dugo did not even bother to offer any help. So I ended up embroidering a few dozen flowers, and then for, let's say, the flowers that hide underneath the shoulder seam, I just embroidered some very, let's say, peculiar type of flowers, which are also bigger, wider and longer. For what concerns the sleeves, they're made out of the same silk organza as the bodice and skirt, but they had this underlayer of point d'Esprit or Swiss dot netting, which comes up to the third pin tuck and is stitched underneath every tuck so that it wouldn't move out of place. The top of the sleeve is gathered with 4 smocking lines which are hand stitched by hand, and then the bottom hem is scrunched up with a little elastic cord. After stitching in the sleeves, I just threaded through this cluny lace edging this elastic cord, and I pulled it a little bit tight so that it would create some tension. And here is what you want to try on this bodice to make sure that neckline comfortably fits around you. And once you got that good, the second lacing end is secured in place. To finish off the armhole at the bottom, I just stitched this bias facing, which I cut, of course, on the bias, and I top stitched it on by machine. They turned it around and hand stitched it down by hand. For what concerns the flower detail along the neckline of the bodice, I cut out the flowers that I just embroidered and pinned them onto this piece of tulle netting, and then I later hand stitched them on. To finish the look off, I just threaded through this 1/8 inch or 3mm navy blue satin ribbon to scrunch up the flowers. Then I pinned and sewed this tulle netting with the flowers along the inside seams of the bodice so that it wouldn't show. And then to finish off the inside, I stitched this pure light cotton white lining on the inside. Another step I took is I stitched a few binding channels along a few seams, and then the most important part and basically the finished of the look is I stitched on my replica shell buttons that I got gifted from the Sandrabi Bottonificio, which is a shop in Parma, and they really finished off the look. To close up the bodice, I stitched hooks and eyes and thread bars, but later I also added a few of those dress clasps that I really love because they keep the bodice closure all nice and tight without gaps.